Maxine Waters, famed member of Congress from California, joins us now. I owed you time.
Oh, you certainly do.
And now here it is. What is the biggest difference to you, Representative, between now and a month ago?
The world has changed. United States, for sure, has changed. This is one of the most huge moments of history that we're experiencing in our country. All of a sudden, in a short period of time, the President of the United States has stepped down, and in stepping down, he endorsed an African-American woman to become the President of the United States of America. And the response has been extraordinary. The enthusiasm is just running all over this country. The money is being raised. The praise is being given. They're getting to know her in a short period of time. And she came into this convention with more than enough delegates to become the nominee. And of course, that has happened here tonight. The votes were here. We have unity that's taken place. And I think we're on a new path to a future that's decidedly different from what we heard from the last president and continue some of the work of Biden.
Do you believe America is ready to elect a female black president?
Everything that I have seen, I certainly believe that America is going to elect a black woman president.
So both Obamas said something that was very interesting and distinct from what we heard from them during the election when he was the nominee. It matters that there is a historic precedent being set.
Yes.
But tonight, it was bigger than it was when it was Obama.
Yes.
They both made the point that it's not just about Harris, that it's amazing that it would be a woman, a black woman, even more so, but it's got to be bigger than that. Do you believe that the Democratic Party can make a case of what they are for that can beat the Republican Party?
Oh, I certainly believe that. And I want you to know, as I've listened to what they have rolled out with already on housing and what they're talking about in terms of helping our younger generation be able to obtain housing, those who could not afford a 20% down. I'm looking at them talking about building more affordable units because of the crisis that we have on housing, the cost of housing, the cost of rent, all of that, they're dealing with that. They're saying unusual things like we've got to raise the pay of teachers who are educating our children in this country. They are talking about the kind of issues that I think people really think a lot about but never think it's going to happen. Don't think that politicians really understand. I think they're getting to that.
How do you address the pushback, which is too expensive, Democrats at their worst, tax and spend? This is all so expensive, and it's all give-backs to people and taking pocket out of hardworking people to pay for it.
I think they have learned now that the corporations of America are paying less taxes than many working people. They know now that not only are the huge corporations not paying their fair share of taxes, they also understand that we've gone through inflation where, producers, both food producers were gouging and grocers were gouging, and now they're beginning to understand that it is not just about too much money for those who don't earn a lot for poor people. It is about stopping the rip-off and the fraud and the stealing of the major corporations in this country and do something for the people.
What does it bring back to your head and your heart when you hear Barack Obama make the case for the Democratic Party?
You know what I think about? I think about when the country first got to know him, when he said something like, it's not red, it's not blue. Remember that statement that he made? That really did, touch people. And that's what sent him off, to people believing that this is the kind of president that we need, who is not about division, but he's about unity. He's about unifying this country. It's about us coming together whenever we can around the issues that have separated us for far too long.
How do you avoid Kamala Harris losing this election because she is held responsible for an uneven economy, because it's this administration's policies, that will be blamed. The buck stops here. So you got two issues: the southern border that has gotten worse under their watch, and grocery prices, gas prices, pocketbook economics worse on their watch. Can she overcome that, and if so, how?
Nobody expected vice presidents to run the country. As a matter of fact, most vice presidents have been very low-key, did not have a portfolio that was assigned from them that was significant. So I don't think they're going to blame Kamala for anything. As a matter of fact, they're going to praise Biden for keeping his promises. He said to many of us, you got my back and I have yours. And he's lived up to that. Did you see the love that he got on the floor last evening? People loved Biden. They thought he was an honorable man. He was a decent human being. He was a fair human being. And they're not blaming anything now on him or her. They're looking forward to the new possibilities of how this country can be the great country that it should and could be.
You worried that people are going to blame you and Nancy Pelosi and other people for making this switch?
No, the people are out of the blaming game. They know that the president has stepped aside. That's done. They know that he's endorsed a woman, a black woman, to be the president of the United States. All of the finger pointing, the blame, the name calling, the ageism that we heard about. As a matter of fact, when I was at a big conference of the Essence people, Essence magazine in New Orleans, I said to people, I'm tired of hearing about Biden's age. Hell, I'm older than he is. And so we had a great response, and people are not thinking about any of that stuff anymore.
It's not age, it's stage.
Oh, I like that.
I don't know how old you are, but you got plenty in the tank. Congressman Waters, thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for being with me
Always
on a
good
historic
to be
night for
with
your
you.
party.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to be continued.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.